do a little review of it. So yeah, I'm very excited. So again, this is just me, a classical guitarist. I'm gonna give you my perspective of this song, and yeah, yeah, I'm I'm very excited.
Okay,
So
we live. So in this video, I will continue my progression about the CCNA, CCNA 200 to 301, and for this learning session, I will continue. For the reminder, the last night was doing CCNA, the life of packet, the life of a packet, the life of a packet, and the lab. Do it with 9 to 11 p.m. series. You can see my last video before this video, of course. So we're gonna continue here to oh, this is the part that I fucking hate, man. I really hate about subnetting, you know. I think we're gonna do two part for subnetting, two part for this session, and two part in the night. We can catch up with the VLANs. We can continue. So for your information, I'm already do till the freelance part 2 here, but because I was not consistent and I had another trouble and problem to be solved, so I left it already 2 weeks, and I started to catch up again. Can start with the subnetting part 1.
welcome to Jeremy's IT.
So for the before this learning session, I was doing and watching a film about war. It is the titles A Kingdom of Heaven, and it released in 2005. So for this movie storytells about the war between Christian and Muslim. The Christian soldier, as you know as Crusader, already um, sitting in Jerusalem. And before that happened, Muslims was in Jerusalem. And then the Christian came, make war in that Jerusalem, killing all the peasants, killing all the regular people, and they push out the Muslims in there. And after 100, Saladin have to get the throne again. I mean, get to the city that Christians were ambushed in. So they have to take Jerusalem. And before that happens, this king, um, the king Saladin, and the king of Christians that sitting in throne in Jerusalem was in peace. So they have to make an agreement. Obviously, they were peace and our situation that came through for that religion. But this Christian king, uh, his name is King Baldwin, was sick. He was sick, and for your information, he got leprosy, or in Indonesian we can call it kusta. So for this leprosy, the king um the king will die, and when the king died, the son of her sister will be the king. So for your information again, King Baldwin doesn't have any kids, and he have a sister, and his sister have a kid, and her kid will be the next king to replace the King Baldwin. So when King Baldwin dies, this kid will um sitting on the throne in the Jerusalem. But as you know, this kid is only 7, 8 years old when he is pronounced to be a king of Jerusalem that time. When um, that happens, um, when that happens, and surprisingly, her kid, the kid that um sitting in the throne right now, he got a leprosy too, just like his uncle. So for the sake of her mother kill him because he don't wanna make don't wanna see his suffer just like his uncle. So after her kid is dead, her mom is replacing her, but for the kingdom rule at that time, it has to be a male to sitting in a throne to rule the kingdom has to be male. So the husband of uh, this woman will be the king. So he pronounced him to be a king, replacing her as a queen. After the king was pronounced to be he, so after he was pronounced to be a king of Jerusalem, he was eventually stated a war against Muslims, against Saladin. And then when that happens, they take over the kingdom. They take over the kingdom and make an army and go to war against Saladin. And when the war occurs, the king and the army of the Christians is lost, were lost. The king is being, the king is not killed, but it was carried, and I assume he was dead because now he is getting ashamed by his people. They make him a clown. So the people saw their king. Okay, after that, um, our main character, Ibeli, was replacing that king, not for the self-proclaimed, but uh, he takes over that um, he takes over and charge and rule the kingdom as that kingdom is no man's place. No one ruled that kingdom because the king is died. And then they were want to defend Jerusalem from the Muslims. And when that happened, Saladin was coming and want to attack Jerusalem and want to take over Jerusalem. So Saladin will eventually leading their troops to take down to Jerusalem. And this Evelyn brother, our MC, he was making a strategy, and he had no choice but to attack Saladin and defend their hometown, Jerusalem. But the army of Saladin is the army of Saladin are 200,000 men. And when to compare to Jerusalem army that already got wiped, and 3 out of 4 of them is already died because the war that occurs with Saladin earlier. So when that happens, Ibelin have to defend their city. And Saladin comes, and there is a war. They get to the war, and so for the Saladin opinion about that place is there's no one should have taken that place despite of the religion for their main purpose in here is Christian and Muslim takes Jerusalem for his as you can call it their main place for their religion. So it's there that there is no man's or no religion has the right to get that place. Every people have their right to be in that place. So when the Saladin comes, um, the army of Ibelin and their people in Jerusalem, the Christians, were defending, and I think half of them already died. And but Ibelin stays and defending and not attacking. They're just defending. So he think if he do that, Saladin will eventually come to a agreement with him. So yeah, that's true. Ibelin and Saladin that will make agreement. Saladin said, when you leave this place, I will transport your people safely to the Christian island, the Christian land. And for the Ibelin that fights for the people, they think it is the last suggestion, it is the right agreement, and he agreed with Saladin. And after that, the Muslim, Saladin and their people gets their throne again at Jerusalem. And Ibelin was safely transported and their people to his Christian land. And when the credit scene happens, Ibelin was getting a visit from the King of Ireland, the King of England, the King, I forgot his name. His name was King Richard, the Hungry Lion. So when he came, he wants to get Jerusalem again. And after that conversation with King Richard, the movie was ended, and there was a text message that saying, after that happened, the King Richard and the army of England attacks Jerusalem, and the peace has never been agreed and occurs within these 1,000 years. That's it. That's the conclusion and what I got from that movie, Kingdom 2005. So I can rate him as 8.2 maybe. Highest the other movie that I watched, because the duration is so fucking long, man. It's 3 hours. 3 hours and 10 minutes. So it released on 3 May 2005. God. Well, that's it. We can continue to our study. Stop netting. I have to take notes in this really much information here. So I have to take notes.
This is a free complete course for the CCNA. Like these videos, please subscribe to follow along with the series. Also, please like and leave a comment, share the video to help spread this free series of videos. Thanks for your This video, we will be talking about this is a very big topic for this, not just for the tech, but it's an essential skill for an engineer. Many people have trouble understanding something. Let me assure you, it is not difficult. Subnetting is very simple if you take it step by step. So I'm going to split subnetting into 2 or maybe even 3 videos so we can take our time to really understand something without getting lost. Now, because subnetting is such an important topic, many people have trouble with it. Already plenty of subnetting videos on YouTube. Feel free to check out those videos too. There are some different tricks and techniques people
I think I'm just gonna watch those video because face is not good for the during this IT video, and I found other video is more helpful and more of the information that contains in the other videos.
Zero. Because when you're counting with computers, computers always start counting zero.
Oh shit.
Okay, so right here,
to the power of 4 is 2 times 2. And tricks and technique for getting subnet. Just a couple, which stands for classless interdomain routing. What exactly is that? Well, remember, I introduced the IPv4 address classes, such as class A, B, and C. Well, CIDR throws all that away. It lets us be more flexible with our IPv4 network. Then, of course, we'll cover the process of subnetting, taking it step by step so you don't get lost. Now, before I get into CIDR, let's review these IPv4 address classes so we can then understand the need for classless IPv4 addressing. There are 5 classes of IPv4 addresses: A, B, C, D, and E. Class A addresses have a first octet beginning with 0, and the rest of the bits can either be 0 or 1. This leads to a decimal range for the first octet of 0 to 127. Remember, IPv4 address is 32 bits, so there are 4 octets, 4 groups of 8 bits in an IPv4 address, or 1. This beginning with the C, D, and E. Class A addresses have a first octet beginning with 0, and the rest of the bits can either be 0 or 1. This leads to a decimal range for the first octet of 0 to 127. Remember, IPv4 address is 32 bits, so there are 4 octets, 4 groups of 8 bits in an IPv4 address.
4 groups of 8 bits. 4 groups of an 8 bits within the IP address. Okay, so for groups, four, but
So there are 4 octets, 4 groups of 8 bits, in an IPv4 address. This makes the Class A address range from 0.0.0.0 through 127.255.255.255. Now, remember, there are some special and reserved addresses in these ranges that can't be used for normal IP addresses on a device. But for this video, we'll just include all of them in Class A. Class B addresses have a first octet beginning with 1, 0, and the other 6 bits can be either 0 or 1. This gives a range for the first octet of 128 through 191. The address range for Class B is 128.0.0.0 through 191.255.255.255.
Class B can get 128 0 2 1 1 255 127 127 change the part of codes host that 127.255 you can change the for the host of the 255 for portion, and for the 127.255 the 255 and the 255 part is the host um 28.0
110, and the others can be either 0 or 1. If you write that range in decimal, that is 192 through 223. The address range is therefore 192.0.0.0 through 223.255.255.255. Class D addresses begin with 1110 in binary, which gives a range of 224 through 239 for the first octet of the address. This means that the address range for Class D is 224.0.0.0 through 239.255.255.255. Finally, Class E addresses begin with 1111 in binary. So the first octet range is 240 through 255. Therefore, the address range is 240.0.0.0 through 255.255.255. However, only the Class A, B, and C addresses can be assigned to a device as an IP address, as classes D and E have special purposes mentioned in the IPv4 addressing videos. Class A addresses have a /8 prefix length, meaning the first octet identifies the network, and the other 3 octets are used for individual hosts within the network. Class B addresses have a /16 prefix length, so the first 2 octets identify the network, 2 octets identify individual hosts within that network. Class C addresses have a prefix length of /24,
3 octets.
so the first 3 octets are used to identify the network, and
Yes.
only the last octet is used to identify individual hosts within that network. The different prefix lengths give different characteristics to these classes. As you can see, there are few Class A networks available, only 128. Actually less than that because served, like the 127.0.0.0/8 range. which you may remember is used for loopback address. Because only the first octet of the class A address is used for the network ID, there are 3 whole octets available for addresses in each class A network. So there are 16,777,216 addresses in each class A network. That is 2 to the power of 24, because there are 3 octets. 3 times 8 equals 24 bits. Class B addresses are different. There are more Class B networks, 16,384, but fewer addresses per network, 65,536, which is still very many addresses. Finally, there are very many Class C networks, 2,097,152 networks, but only 256 addresses per network. So, how does a company get their own network address range to use? Well, IP addresses are assigned to companies or organizations by a nonprofit American corporation called the IANA, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. The IANA assigns IPv4 addresses and networks to companies based on. For example, a very large company might receive a Class A or a Class B network. Remember, there are lots of available addresses to use for hosts, each Class A and Class B network, while a small company might receive a Class C network, because there are fewer addresses in each Class C network, only 256. However, this system led to many wasted IP addresses. So multiple methods of improving this system have been created. Let me give you an example of how this strict system of addresses wastes IP addresses. So, here are 2 routers. As you can see, R1 has 3 networks connected to it here. Remember that routers are used to connect different networks. So each of these links are separate layer 3 networks, different IP networks. R2 also has 3 networks connected here. Perhaps each of these networks will have a few switches, with many end hosts, such as PCs and servers, connected to these switches. However, there is one more network here. That's this network, connecting these 2 routers. This is known as a point-to-points network, meaning that it's a network connecting 2 points, in this case R1 and R2. For example, this might be a connection between offices in different cities, let's say San Francisco and New York. So, because this is a point-to-points network, we don't need a large address flow. So let's use a Class C network, 203.0.103.0/24. Because this is a Class C network, there are 256 addresses in the network. -1 for the network address, 203.0.113.0, -1 for the broadcast address, 203.0.113.255, -1 for R1's address, which I'll assign as 203.0.113.1, and -1 for R2's address, which I'll assign as 203.0.113.2. That's a total of 4 addresses used, and 252 addresses wasted. Clearly, this is not an ideal system. Before introducing CIDR, here's another quick example of address waste. A company, Company X, needs IP addressing for 5,000 end hosts. This is a problem. Why? A Class C network does not provide enough addresses, so a Class B network must be assigned. Because a Class B network allows for about 65,000 addresses, this results in about 60,000 addresses being wasted. When the Internet was first created, the creators did not predict that the Internet would become as large as it is today. This resulted in wasted address space, like the examples I showed you, and there are many more examples that I could show you. The total IPv4 address space includes over 4 billion addresses, and that seemed like a huge number of addresses when IPv4 was created. But now, address space exhaustion is a big problem. There's not enough addresses. One way to solve or remedy this problem is CIDR. The IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, introduced CIDR in 1993 to replace the classical addressing system. With CIDR, the requirements of Class A addresses must use a /8 network mask, Class B must use /16, and class C must use /24, were removed. This allowed larger networks to be split into smaller networks, allowing greater efficiency. These smaller networks are called subnetworks, or subnets. Let's look at an example of splitting a larger network into a smaller network so you can see how it works. Here's the same point-to-point network we looked at before. Previously, it was assigned the 203.0.113.0/24 network space, but that resulted in lots of wasted addresses. Let's write this out in binary. Here's the binary with the dotted decimal underneath. Now, the prefix length is /24, so
Where's the menentukan 203 minus 128 75 32 was not 32 was greater than 11. 16 2 was greater than 11. 1 minus 4 0 1 0 0 1 0 $2
with the network mask, also known as the subnet mask, 255.255.255.0. Remember, all ones in the subnet mask indicate that the same bit in the address is the network portion. In this case, I made the network portion blue, and the host portion is red. Well, how many host bits are there? 8, because it's 1 octet. So, how many potential hosts, or how many usable addresses are there? Well, formula is this. 2 to the power of 8 minus 2 equals 254 usable addresses. What is the 8? Well, it's the number of host bits, which is 8 in this case.
Equation to calculate the number of hosts in one network is 2 to the power of n minus 2. So for this case, for the /24, as you can see in this screen, you can count the number of bits, the number of hosts, that host portion. So in red color, meaning it's 8 number of bits. Yeah, 2 to the power of. So the answer is 2 5. And
And y minus 2, those are the network address and broadcast address. We can't assign them to a device, so we have to remove them from the number of usable addresses. So, we have 254 usable addresses, but we only need 2, one for R1 and one for R2. However, CIDR allows us to use different prefix lengths, so it doesn't have to be /24. Let's get some practice calculating the number of hosts within different prefix lengths. 203.0.113.0/25.
Less 24. It uses one of that bits. Have to port this decimal number to binary number first. 0.03 0.113.0. 203 minus 1 equal 0.000. Minus 8 1 2 3 4 0 1 minus 32 10 0 0 3 2 2 2 plus 5 plus 5 2 5 plus 2 5 5 the um the, the whole portion is 7. The whole portion is this. It means the CCNA many usable address there in each. Use this. Feed 16 24 and this portion. So we can get through that formula to power of n to the 2. The n is the power of 7 is 2. 2 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 2 5 8 28 minus 2 and 26. They will add this.
203.0.113.0/6, 203.0.113.0/7,
6 would be it's 64. 64 minus 2. 32 minus 2 is 30.
8, 9, slash 30.
Just 2, 4, 2, 4, 3 minus 2, 3, 4, 2 minus 2. It will be 14. It will be 8 minus 6. It will be 4 2, 20 to the power of 2.
Slash 31, finally slash 32. I've put slash 31 and slash 32 in red because they're a little bit special. You'll see when you try it. So, pause the video here and try to calculate how many usable addresses are in each network. Okay, let's check out the answers. So, here is 203.0.113.0, but this time with a slash 25 mask. Notice that the network portion of the address has extended into the first bit of the last octet, and the mask in dotted decimal is now written as 255.255.255.128.
Correct.
I changed the color of the extra bit to purple, but it is part of the network portion, the blue part. If you don't remember how to convert from binary to dotted decimal, make sure you review that. It's very important. Now, there are 7 bits in the host portion of the address. So the number of usable addresses is 2 to the power of 7 minus 2, which equals 126. Once again, we only need 2 addresses, one for R1 and one for R2. So we will be wasting 124 addresses. Better than wasting 252 addresses with a slash 24 prefix length, but it's still wasteful. How about a slash 26 prefix length? Notice that it's now written 255.255.255.192 in dotted decimal, because 2 bits of the last octet are now part of the network portion. There. Six host bits. There are now 62 usable addresses in this network. If we were to use a slash 26 network map for the 203.0.113.0 network, we would be wasting 60 addresses. Getting better, we can make this network even smaller. Now that you get the idea, let's speed it up. For slash 27 prefix length, the mask is written as 255.255.255.224 in dotted decimal. There are now 5 host bits. So that means there are 30 usable addresses. As you can see, the address space is getting smaller and smaller as we extend the network map. For a slash 28 prefix length, the mask is written as 255.255.255.240 in dotted decimal. There are now only 4 host bits, so that means there are 14 usable addresses. After assigning addresses to R1 and R2, this would mean only 12 wasted addresses. But we can make this address space even smaller, to make our addressing even more efficient. If we use a /29 prefix line, mask is written as 255.255.255.248 in dotted decimal. Now we have only 3 host bits, so that means there are just 6 usable addresses. Again, after we give R1 and R2 addresses, there would be only 4 wasted addresses. Dotted decimal. Now we have only 3 host bits, so that means there are just 6 usable addresses. Again, after we give R1 and R2 addresses, there would be only 4 wasted addresses. If we use a /30 prefix length, mask is written as 255.255.255.252 in dotted decimal. There are now only 2 host bits, so that means 2 usable addresses. So this is perfect. There are 4 total addresses. That's the network address, broadcast address, R1's address, and R2's address. That means 0 wasted addresses. Before moving on to look at the /31 and /32 prefix length, let me clarify a little bit. So instead of 203.0.113.0/24, we will use 203.0.113.0/30, which is a subnet of that larger Class C network. 203.0.113.0/30 includes the address range of 203.0.113.0 through 203.0.113.3. Let me show you that in binary. Here is 203.0.113.0 in binary. Host portion all zeros. Here is 203.0.113.1, 203.0.113.2, and 203.0.113.3. These are the 4 addresses in the network. These 2 being the 2 usable addresses, which are assigned to R1 and R2. So, you took up 4 addresses with this subnet. What about the other addresses in the 203.0.113.0/24 range? Remaining addresses in the address block, which are 203.0.113.4 through 203.0.113.255, are now available to be used in other subnets. That's the magic of subnetting. Instead of using 203.0.113.0/24 and wasting 252 addresses, we can use /30 and waste no addresses. Or perhaps there is another way to make this even more efficient. Let's look into it. If we use a /31 prefix length, the mask is written as 255.255.255.254 in dotted decimal. There is now only 1 host bit, so that means 0 usable addresses. 2 to the power of 1 is 2, minus 2 for the network and broadcast addresses, means 0 addresses that we can assign to devices. So you used to not be able to use /31 network prefixes because of this. However, for a point-to-point connection like this, it actually is possible to use a /31 mask. Let's check it out. So here's the 203.0.113.0/31 network. R1 is 203.0.113.0, and R2 is 203.0.113.1. The 203.0.113.0/31 network consists of addresses from 203.0.113.0 through 203.0.113.1, which is actually only 2 addresses. Here they are in binary. There's 203.0.113.0, and there's 203.0.113.1. Normally, this would be a problem, because it leaves no usable addresses after subtracting the network and broadcast address. But for point-to-point networks like a dedicated connection like this between two routers, there's actually no need for a network address or a broadcast address. So we can break the rules in this case and assign the only two addresses in this network to our routers. Note that if you try this configuration on a Cisco router, you'll get a warning like this, reminding you to make sure that this is a point-to-point link. It is a totally valid configuration. So once again, the remaining addresses in the 203.0.113.0/24 address block, which are 203.0.113.2 through 255, now available to be used in other networks. But this time, we saved even more addresses, using only 2 addresses instead of 4 for this point-to-point connection. People still do use /30 for point-to-point connections at times, but /31 masks are totally valid and more efficient than /30. I recommend this method. But we still haven't looked at the /32 mask. /32 mask is written as 255.255.255.255 dotted decimal, taking the entire address, the network portion. There are no host bits.
Okay.
If you calculate this using our formula, we will get -1 usable addresses. Clearly, the formula doesn't work in this case. You won't be able to use a /32 mask in this case, and you will probably never use a /32 mask to configure an actual interface. However, there are some uses for a /32 mask. For example, when you want to create a static route not to a network, but to just one specific host, you can use a /32 mask to specify that exact host. Anyway, I'll talk about that later in the course. Just know that /32 masks are used at some point, but you don't have to worry about the format. Here's a simple check.
For the static routes that we configured in the last video and the last lab, the troubleshooting and the configuring the static routing. So as we notice, we have to configure the static routes to example to a specific host or a specific router. We can use the /32 to actually match that IP address, because you know the rule when the first rule to static routing is to match the least specific and the most longest prefix to have that exact matching rule. So if you have to configure and route to another network that has the specific routing, you can use /32. That's what Jeremy wants to explain, that /32 notation to us.
Chart from the dotted decimal subnet mask and their equivalent in CIDR notation. That's right, the way of writing a prefix with a slash followed by the prefix length, like /25, /26, etc., is called CIDR notation, because it was introduced with the CIDR system. Previously, only the dotted decimal method was used. Note that I've showed you only how to subnet a Class C network, but we will look at Class B and Class A networks as well, with prefix length like /17, 11, 9. I spent a lot of time on just that one example, but I hope you can see the use of subnetting, dividing a larger network into smaller networks. Instead of using the whole 203.0.113.0/24 network for the point-to-point connection, we can use a /30 subnet and use only 4 addresses. Even better, use a /31 subnet and use only 2 addresses. I'll give one more example of subnetting before finishing up this video. In the next video, I'll give you some practice problems and walk you through them so you can get some hands-on practice subnetting. So here's a scenario. There are 4 networks connected to R1, with many hosts connected to each switch. There are 45 hosts per network. R1 needs an IP address in each. Its address is included in that 45 host. You have received the 192.168.1.0/24 network, and you must divide the network into 4 subnets that can accommodate the number of hosts required. First off, are there enough addresses in the 192.168.1.0/24 network in the first place? So we need
Yes.
45 hosts per network, including R1.
180.
But also remember that each network has a network and broadcast address, so that's plus 2.
Mm.
So we need 47 addresses per subnet.
Mm.
47 times
Well.
4 equals 188. So there's no problem in terms of it.
So for the 45 hosts, it adds 2 for the broadcast and
Plus 2. So we need 45 hosts per network, including R1. But also remember that each network has a network and broadcast address.
network and broadcast address.
So that's
Okay.
plus 2.
That's
So we need
plus 2.
47 addresses per subnet. 47 times 4 equals 188. So there's no problem in terms of the number of hosts. 192.168.1.0/24 is a Class C network. So there are 256 addresses. So we will be able to assign 4 subnets to accommodate all hosts. Okay, let's see how we can accommodate all hosts. No problem.
For the 45 hosts per network, we can see to our spider notation here. So we already configure and we already calculate all the hosts. I mean the usable address from the notation. So for the /24, so for the class C, it has 254 hosts, and it's stated /24, so it can covers all the hosts plus all the broadcast ID and the network ID. So 47 times 4 equals 188 hosts. So it can covers that a lot of hosts in their network. So for it in the class C. So we here wants to subnet these 4 network that has each of them has 45 hosts per network. So as you can see here, the switch 1 and R1 contains 45 hosts plus 2 broadcast and network, so it has 47 hosts, and each of them, switch 2, switch 3, and switch 4 also contain 45 hosts. So what we have to do here is to subnet all of these 4 hosts, so it will be covers with the 254 hosts as a class C. So for the /25, we got /25, we got 126 usable address. So when we use that 126 usable address for /25, we can count 126 minus 47. So we didn't use this the address that we didn't use is 79 address, so it just throw and we didn't use it. So for the slash 26, we got um, 62 hosts per network. 62 hosts per network is better than 28 that we will be removing, and we will not be using 79 press. So we can count 62 minus 47. So it's better than the slash 25. We probably have, we probably wanna use this address, but we will continue to slash 28. For the slash 28, we will have 14 hosts. So for the 14 host is smaller than 47. So we can actually do that because the host is not filling that 47 host that we need. So we will use slash plus 26 here. Plus 26. We will use slash 26. So for the switch one, yeah, can open my notepad. For the switch one, use here. We will use 192. Type the network ID. Network ID. Broadcast. First first IP, last IP. For network ID, for the switch one will be used 192 8 168 1 0 plus 26. Broadcast ID 192.1.62. Press 64 before the broadcast ID will be 3 will be 6 IP will be 8.1, and the last IP will be 192.168.1.63. Okay, the switch to can copy this, paste in here. Network ID will be 64. Okay. Price is yeah, 632. We can calculate. can do for 128 times 8. Oh, 64. We will 64 for the network ID. It will be /26. Broadcast ID we will 127. First IP will be 65. Last IP will be 123. Repeat that. 27 and 128. Network. The broadcast ID will be 128 plus 64. 192. Broadcast ID will 128. The broadcast will 1 1 1 plus IP will be 127, 129. Last IP 1. Yes. Okay. Okay. Need to switch. Network ID will be this IP 1 2 broadcast plus 64 6. Yeah. 8 times will be this for the net. Small for the ID will be 255. First IP will this will be subnet. You can
Okay, let's see how we can calculate the subnets we need to make. We need 4 equal-sized subnets with enough room for at least 45 hosts. Here, I've written out 192.168.1.0 with a /30 nets, 255.255.255.252. I skipped /32 and /31 since these aren't point-to-point links. We can't use /31. Definitely can't use /32. Since there are 2 host bits, the formula to determine the number of usable addresses is 2 to the power of 2 minus 2. 2 to the power of 2 is 2 times 2, which is 4. That means there are 2 usable addresses in a /30 network. Clearly, not enough room to accommodate the 45 hosts we have. How about if we use a /29 mask to make these? Can we fit the 45 hosts we need? There are 3 host bits, so the formula is 2 to the power of 3 minus 2. 2 to the power of 3 is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. Therefore, there are 6 usable addresses, not enough for 45 hosts. How about if we use /28? 4 host bits. Formula is 2 to the power of 4 minus 2. 2 to the power of 4 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 16. So that means there are 14 usable addresses. Once again, not enough for 45 hosts. How about /27? There are 5 hosts. So the formula is 2 to the power of 5 minus 2. And 2 to the power of 5 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 32. That means 30 usable addresses. Again, not enough for 45 hosts. How about a /26? There are now 6 host bits. So the formula is 2 to the power of 6 minus 2. 2 to the power of 6 is 2 times 2 times 2, 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 64. That means there are 62 usable addresses. So it looks like we found our number. /27 doesn't provide enough addresses. /26 provides more than we need, but we have to go with 20. Fortunately, you can't always make subnets have exactly the number of addresses you want. There might be some unused address space. That's actually fine, since it's good to have some room for growth anyway. So, I think this video has gone on long enough. Instead of finishing this task in this video, I'll make it this week's quiz. First subnet, subnet 1, is 192.168.1.0/26. What are the remaining subnets? To help you out, here's a hint. Find the broadcast address of subnet 1. The next address, after that, is the network address of subnet 2. Then just repeat the process for subnets 3 and 4. Post your answers in the comment section, and I'll also go over the answer in the next video.
Okay, guess we back for some that part, and we will have to continue to part of
Welcome to
learning.
Jeremy's IT Lab. This is a free, complete course for the CCNA.
I think I'm gonna set a timer for Podomoro for 5 minutes, just like we do yesterday. Clear this. Salam.
Wow, we have not slaves to this torment.
All right, people, this is from the first album, Eaten Back to Life. Song Shredded.
Tuning just in time for the album file 1000 1199 featured broadly a highly technical and brutal vocal style featuring a mix of rapid fire articulation and piercing highs. He has fronted the band for nearly 3 decades on albums like Kill 2006 and Violence Imagine 2021. Personality and hobbies. Fisher is massive pop culture figure in heavy metal, recognized for his famous massive neck and his wholesome, well-documented hobby of tuning giant plush toys from a claw machine to United Children's Hospital. With comparison, metal fans frequently debate the two vocalists. Many fans cherish Barth for his foundational contribution to the old school death death metal aesthetic and its dark lyricism. Conversely, many view Fisher as a superior vocalist due to his consistent endurance, live performance reliability, and the sheer technically brutally he brought to the band's later faster material. Fisher initially met Chris Barnes, Alex Webster, and Paul Mazurkiewicz at the Cannibal Corpse show in Washington, D.C. Fisher left Varsity in late '9 and joined the Cannibal Corpse, replacing Barnes on vocals after Webster called Fisher and gave him an offer.
Next question from Andreas from Poland. Actually, Andreas wrote a lovely letter. I'm going to give it to you after the show. And he had loads of questions for you, so I'm just going to read out a few. When Megadeth first started, you were one of the most kind of extreme bands in terms of music. And now, really, death metal has taken over from that and become even more brutal. Andreas wants to know, what do you think of the death metal bands like sort of Deicide and those kind of bands?
Well, it's flattering that he would say something like that, and you know, I've pretty much been aware of the fact how much my role was in creating a big part of the whole scene that's developed in heavy metal, thrash metal, and death metal, black metal, all that stuff. You know, when I started off with the guys in Metallica, we had no idea what we had discovered or what we were creating. And I think that death metal right now, it's something that I'm not particularly too aware of. I know what it is. I don't really know a lot of the bands that are in it, and I think it's necessary because just as there's many people that are out there that want to hear that kind of music. Mm-hmm. There has to be that many good bands. There's a lot of great death metal bands.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Opinion of Dave, Dave Mustaine is a lot of people have to enjoy the death metal scene because it is he stated that the death metal was not in that kind of thing, this kind of scope. So when he sees and realizes there are many people that um liking the style of death metal music, there must be some other bands or many bands that great with the death metal scene.
Could you introduce us to members? Steve Bell, new album.
And Steve Georgia on bass.
You at the shoot then.
Well, I've known both for quite some time. Worked out great. You know, basically for a long time. You know, got a lot of mutual out battle. And so it worked out great.
We're going to talk about the new album, Visual Thought, critical moment, but let's you guys did on the tour.
I think the tour is definitely fan what he's hopes. It's a big undertaking to tour like this, and it's we really called it been excellent. It kind of we were wondering this is like the first time we've all played together in a unit. We were wondering, you know, Steve and Chuck and Gene and Rihanna and the other stuff. And it worked out. We got a good time.
bonding thing. You're ready to go.
Yeah. Metal brothers, for example, bonded through metal and through ourselves.
There's so many rumors surrounding Chuck.
Well, we cut it 2 weeks early, actually. We did 6 weeks of touring, and then financial part of things completely fell apart due to uh, people mismanaging food, not being paid, a lot of things. This is a nightmare financially. Tour life is great. So this is a great. People really, you know, they accepted things, and it's fantastic at that level. But financially, it's a disaster. You cannot tour without food. And we do not make millions. This is not a big money making thing.
For the scene that tragically affect that Chuck killed another band, it was that it's mainly because the financial problem that occurs in that band when they're touring. So uh, when they're actually doing tours, they have a financial problems because some people did not get paid, and other problems that occurs from money. So they have a big, like, big problem in that situation. So when he had that situation, he had um health problems too. You know, the Chuck Soldier had cancer, brain cancer. So when I um made a little bit of research last time, so the Chuck Soldier was he didn't ask for money for the fans. The fans funded him for his medication because for the musicians didn't have that medical expenses or insurance medical insurance back then. So he didn't have a really enough money. So and he didn't do the tours. When he sick, he got a brain cancer, and then the fans have to fund the money for himself. They donated him like a charity to uh, medical expensive to his brain cancer, and I think that was made Chuck Soldier and the band was over. The band was disbanded. So I think that was the fall down of that. It was a great band. It was um I like how they sounded like. I like how the guitar was sounding. I like um how the vocals were made by him. And from this band, I must admit it, I started to like the progressive metal. So as you know, the progressive metal, um, Dream Theater, as example, I didn't really like Dream Theater because it was really boring. I don't know. This makes me dizzy about the sequential notes that they were playing. But for this death metal genre of the progressive metal, I am really fucked up. So because of that, the voice, the graspiness that we have, um, the technicality of the drums, the bass, the guitars make me really fucking like. So I don't really like the progressive metal, but I fucking like progressive death metal as like this band.
I think everyone involved in this band definitely has their own style within their what instrument is. And I think that really makes a big difference. It's really hard to work with people who have their own styles because there's a lack of those people. Inspiration, if you let you know that you're friends with, and that really so strong at what they do and have their own idea. That is crucial. These ideas to be happy. Whether you play piano or whatever, you know. So I think that is definitely you know, there's been a lot of time for the actual music, but for trying to control what people play, they come in, let loose, let the metal flow, and that's what happens.
Metal flow.
Metal flow, keep flowing.
Now, Andy LaRock, now, who have you got?
For it. Ralph is in another band, band called Witness. He's helped orders and it's great. It's wonderful. I think people know.
But do you have like also you are ruling the roots in the band and that maybe you want your all the time? Change it.
Well, yes, I mean, the people should say about the vision and that, or for whatever reason, they have a person that has it really should not affect views on me as a person. And they should be just happy that they're good metal. Because that's all I care about with the band. The road. Humorous.
Born in 1967, year of interview 9. It was 15. What the fuck? I said. It's 26.
More straightforward. There's a lot of things like this one is more, a lot more terms and just a lot more news. So there's, you know,
That's the same dude within 30 years span. Okay. I think I did it again. I think you believe we're more than just friends. Yo, baby, seem like a cross, but it doesn't mean that I'm serious. Just to lose all my senses that you're so deep between me. You know the story?
If you like these
Part two.
videos, please subscribe to follow along with the series. Also, please like and leave a comment, share the video to help spread this free series of videos. Thanks for your help. In this video, we'll continue to learn about subnetting. Last video, I introduced why subnetting is necessary and walked through a few examples. In this video, I'll try to give some more clear steps for solving subnetting problems. I've also decided to make one more video on subnetting, so this will be a 3-video series. So, what exactly will we cover in this video? We'll start with some subnetting practice questions, specifically for Class C networks, like last video. You'll start, of course, with the solution to last video's quiz question. After that, we'll look at subnetting Class B networks. The process is exactly the same, no matter what class of address you subnet, but it can be a little bit more difficult with larger networks. Class A networks will be covered in the next video. So, let's take a look at how to solve last video's question. I asked you to divide the 192.168.1.0/24 network into 4 subnets that can accommodate 45 hosts each. We found that a /26 subnet is the right size to fit 45 hosts, so we assigned the block 192.168.1.0/26 subnet 1. If you don't remember how we determined that /26 is the correct size, take a minute to review the end of the last video. So I asked you to find the remaining subnets. I also gave you this hint. If you find the broadcast address of subnet 1, the next address after that will be the network address of subnet 2. So, the network address for subnet 1 is 192.168.1.0/26. Here's 192.168.1.0 written in binary. Blue is the network portion, red is the host portion, and purple is the part we borrowed from the host portion to add to the network portion. This allows us to divide the larger /24 network into multiple smaller subnets. Find the broadcast address for this subnet, which is the highest address in the subnet's address range. Set all of the bits in the host portion to 1. Next, let's convert this to dotted decimal. It becomes 192.168.1.63. That's the broadcast address. So, the address range for subnet 1 is 192.168.1.0 through 192.168.1.63. The network address of subnet 2.
So for the steps to determine the broadcast address, I found a really easy steps to do that. So despite how you will configure calculate this section, and this is the network ID, this is the host portion. For the host portion, you will change that zeros to 1 to all ones, and you will have to calculate this to determine the host the broadcast address for this subnet. So for my steps here, to let me open the calculator first. So when you try to sign a subnet for that for a subnet, as you can see here, we use the /26 notation. For your information, the /26 notation contains 62 usable IP address. So 2 the power of n, 2 for the power of 7 minus 2. So it will be equals 62. So for the 62 host portion, to determine the broadcast address for the next um, subnet, you have to add in the original host, including the host portion, including the broadcast and the network portion. So it the 62 host portion will be 64. So you have to add 64 to determine the network address for the next IP address. So for example, in here the subnet one, as I can calculate for that last session that we do, for the switch one, we got a network ID that has 192.168.1.0/26. And for this 1.0, we have to add 64 for that. So when we had 0 to 0 plus 64, we got the network ID for the next device or the next subnet for the switch 2. For this example, as you can see here, I adding 0 plus 64, and we got the broadcast ID for that network ID, the 64. I will pengurangan is subtraction, bahasa Inggris, reduction. Yeah, you have to subtract that the next network ID to subtract -1. So for the 64, -1 will be 63. For the broadcast ID will be 63, and so on and so forth. For the switch 3 and switch 4, as you can see here, the network ID will be .64. You have to add 64. I will calculate 64 plus 64 will be 128 for the next network ID in the next subnet or the switch 3. And for the switch 4, you have to add 6 plus 64 to plus 128 plus 64 is 192, and the next ID will be 192.192. So instead, you
192.168.
have to do all of this kind of thing. I'm not saying that this method is not good, but I'm had an understanding. I have known the best possible way to do this method.
.1.63. That's the broadcast address. So the address range for subnet 1 is 192.168.1.0 through 192.168.1.63.
It's for the broadcast.
The network address of subnet 2 is one higher than the broadcast address. So that means that subnet 2 will be 192.168.1.64/26. That's the network address. And here it is in binary. Notice that we changed one of the bits we borrowed from the host portion to a 1. So the network address is now 192.168.1.64, with all of the host bits set to 0. Let's find the broadcast address. Change all of the host bits to 1. Now let's convert it to dotted decimal. So the broadcast address is 192.168.1.127. That's the range for subnet 2. Add 1 to the broadcast address, we'll get the network address for subnet 3. So that means subnet 3 is 192.168.1.128/26. Here is the network address in binary. Again, notice we changed one of the borrowed purple bits to 1, but the host bits are all 0. Change them to 1, and here's the broadcast address. So the address range for this subnet is 192.168.1.128 through 192.168.1.191. Now,
I think for the best practice and how to easily solve this subnetting, especially for the C class, you have to memorize all of the subnet, net mask, and the usable IP or usable host for each notation. Example, for the class 24, the usable host will be 155 hosts, and for the /26, it will be, the usable IP will be 126 hosts, and for the /20 26, you will get the 62 usable hosts. For the /27, you will get /27, we will get 30 usable hosts, and so on and so forth. You have to memorize that. And for the subnet, it's important to memorize. For the /25, you will get the 255.255.255.128, and for the /26, you will get 28 plus 62 and 64, 28, 190. That one, 34.
I said last video that I would just show you the basics of subnetting, not any special subnetting tricks, but let me show you just one that can help you figure things out faster. So, we found that a /26 subnet mask is appropriate. That's because there are 6 host bits, which allows 62 hosts. Let's draw this line here. On the left side is the network portion, and on the right side is the host portion. Since we're just looking at the last octet, let me make it bigger. Okay, so I've put the binary for just the last octet down here. Again, the red part is the host portion, and the purple part is the bits we borrowed to expand the network portion. You should remember the value of each binary bit, but let me put them up here anyway. The right, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and 128. Notice that the last bit of the network portion is 64. This means that to find the next subnet, you just have to add 64. Let's see. Add 64 and we get 192.168.1.64, which is the network address of subnet 2. Add 64 again, we get 192.168.1.128, which is the network address of subnet 3. Finally, add 64 again, and we get 192.168.1.192, which is the network address of subnet 4. So, as you can see, by adding 64 each time, we were able to find the network addresses of each subnet. Now let's try another similar exercise. We have been given the 192.168.255.0/24 network, and have been asked to divide the network into 5 subnets of equal size. In this case, the number of hosts in each subnet hasn't been specified. So let's make 5 subnets that are as large as they can be.
large as they can be. Divide the /24 net into 5 subnets of equal size. Then 25 subnets. Um, the four times you said 2 5.
So all we have to do to solve this problem is find how many bits we have to borrow from the host portion. Currently, we are borrowing 0 bits from the host. That means that we can't make any subnet. We just have one network, 192.168.255.0/20. If we borrow 1 bit, it now becomes a /25 network. Borrowing 1 bit also means we can make 2 subnets. Why is that? Well, all of the original network bits, the blue bits, cannot be changed. That is the network we received. However, the purple bit, the bit we borrowed from the host portion, we can change. And it can be either 0 or 1. If it's 0, we have the 192.168.255.0/25 network. If it's 1, we have the 192.168.255.128/25 network. The formula for the number of subnets is 2 to the power of x, and x is the number of borrowed bits. This is similar to calculating the number of hosts in a subnet, which is 2 to the power of n minus 2, and n is the number of host bits. We subtract 2 for the network address and broadcast address, which can't be assigned to host. However, when calculating,
So it means when you borrow the 1 bit network port, 1 bit of host portion, it will be identify the number of subnet within this function. So for the 5 subnets, we have to use that function. It means the x is number of borrowed bits. We try to borrow 2 bits. 2 power of 2 is 4. We can create 4 subnet. If we borrow 2, it means it's /26. When we borrow 2 the power of 3, 2 the power of 3 is 8. We can make 8 subnets. So for the 5 subnet is smaller than the 8 subnet. We can use /27.
calculating the number of subnets, you don't have to subtract. So it's simply 2 to the power of x, number of borrowed bits. Anyway, we need 5 subnets, so borrowing 1 bit isn't enough. What if we borrow 2 bits? Well, 2 to the power of 2 is 4. So borrowing 2 bits allows us to make 4 subnets. Still not enough. We need 5. So let's borrow another bit. If we borrow 3 bits, how many subnets?
8.
2 to the power of 3 is 8. So we can make 8 subnets. So this is our answer. It's more subnets than we need. We need just 5. But if we borrow only 2 bits and use a /26 map, we won't have enough.
We won't have enough.
I said in the last video, you can't always make the numbers exactly match the number of subnets, number of hosts you need. So our first subnet will be 192.168.2.
Okay.
What? My
I
target.
already know all the tricks.
Before we go.
I will try to subnet this within the requirements of 5 subnet. So we have to identify the 5 subnets. Can do this, copy this again. So we add for the switch 5. Okay, for the IP, thing, didn't really change it all the time, pasting and copying for the next. For network ID, it will be 192.1.255.0 plus 20. Broadcast ID for the slash 27, for the slash 26 that we do in that earlier problems. For the slash 26, it has 62 usable address. So as I'm telling you for the trick, for the last time that I spoke, I have to add the host portion plus 2. It means 62 plus 6, 62 plus 2 and 64. I had to add 64 to that part of host. So for the slash 27, it has the usable address 30 32 yes, the 30. We add 2 hosts for the broadcast and network, so we got the 32. Okay, for the broadcast ID, it will be 22.168.255.31, and the first IP will be, I'm gonna copy this. The first IP will be 1, and the last IP will be 0. And we will continue copying this. Copy this. For the subnet 1, 2 we will be 32, and 32 plus 32 is 64. 64 will be our network address at switch 2. For the broadcast ID, it will be 63, and first IP will be 33, and the last IP will be 62. We copy that and continue to do subnet 2. And for the 64, it will be 64. 64 adds we had to add 64 plus 32, 64 plus 32, so 96. So we got 90. As for the switch 4, and for the broadcast ID, we got 96, and we will get the broadcast ID 95. And for the first IP, we will type 65. For the last IP, I will type 94. And then for the switch 4 or subnet 4. Um, yes, 96. 96. Calculate 6 times m at 32. 28. 28. And then this 6 128, so it's gonna be 127. First IP will be 7, last IP will be 126. And for the last subnet, which number 5, it will be 128 plus 32. So we add this 128. Broadcast ID will be 159. First IP will be 129, and the last IP will be 158.
In this case, the number of hosts in each subnet cannot be one of the original hash. Here's just the last option. Using the trick I introduced before, subnet 1 is 192.168.2, which is 192.168.255.32/27. Add 32 again, and we get subnet 3, 192.168.255.64/27. Subnet 4 is 192.168.255.96/27, and subnet 5 is 192.168.255.128/27. Okay, we made up 5 subnets, as our requirements were to divide the network into 5 subnets. However, /27 prefix length allows up to 8 subnets to be made from the address range. These 3 remaining subnets are 192.168.255.160.192 and .224/27. Here's another type of subnetting question you might find.
What subnet does host 192.168.557 plus 27 belong to? Um, so will be belong to or 0 to 32 and 32. So it we belong to dot 32 plus 27.
What subnet does host 192.168.5.57/27 belong to? So we have the IP address of a host, 192.168.5.57, and we don't know the network address of the subnet. We say 0 and you get
Yeah,
the host
I was right.
192.168.5.57 belongs to the subnet 192.168.5.32/27. Let's do one more for practice. What subnet does host 192.168.29.219?
For the slash 29, 32, again for the slash 28, and the 8, 8 for the less than 9.
Slash 29 belong to. Pause the video now and vector, change that back to 2.16. Exact productive, so the borrow. Now, to find the network address, simply need to change all the host bits to 0. Now, the last octet is 00100000. Change that back to dotted decimal, and you get
Oh. For the for this method, we have to only convert this decimal to binary. For 219 minus 128 minus 6 minus 6 equal 16 minus 8 4 minus 2 and 1. So for this last one, 25, 26, 28, 29. These are
toxic. Now, change that.
change this to all zeros. It will be 28 plus 54 plus 16 plus 8. So
Back to dotted decimal, keep this 50. Where the and added, then convert back to dotted decimal. Here's our answer. So, host 192.168.29.219/29 belongs to the subnet 192.168.29.216/29. Okay, let's review some numbers. This is a table of the different subnet sizes for Class C networks. For example, with a /25 prefix length, you divide the network into 2. There are 2 subnets. Also, each subnet can contain 126 hosts. I recommend that you memorize these numbers. It will help you perform subnetting faster and easier than if you have to calculate everything every single time.
for this last 25 of subnet host will be plus 25 for one bit from host portion. So 1 bit, it will be get into the formula 2 for the power of 1. Get 2 subnet. Mistake would also 126 will be 64 minus 2, 62 hosts, plus 27 will be 8 outlets. And the host will be 30 hosts plus 28. And plus 16, so that's host plus 20. 32. The host will be 6 plus 30. Number of subnet will be 4. Host will be yes, plus 31. Host plus 30.
Although these are fairly simple to calculate. For the number of subnets, each additional bit that you borrow doubles the number of subnets. For number of hosts, each host bit doubles the amount of hosts, except you have to subtract 2, the network and broadcast addresses. Take note of /31. The number of hosts is 0. I mentioned this in the last video, but it's because there is only a single host bit. So there are only 2 possible addresses, which are taken by the network and broadcast address. However, for a point-to-point connection, you can actually use a /31 and assign those 2 addresses to each end of the. We have no network broadcast addresses. Also, /32 technically uses all bits for the network address, allowing no host. But you can't assign a /32 mask to identify a specific host when writing routes and such, and in some other special. Now let's finally take a look at subnetting some larger networks, specifically Class B. Looking at this chart again, you can see that there are many more host bits, and therefore many more possible subnets can be created with a Class B network than with a Class C network. However, the process of subnetting is exactly the same. So I'll just walk you through a couple examples with Class B networks, and then we'll leave Class A networks for the last video of this. You have been given the 172.16.0.0/16 network. You are asked to create 80 subnets for your company's various LANs. What prefix length should you use?
You have been given the 16 network. Asked to create 18 subnets for your company's various plans. Prefix length should you use for builds? For the class B, it's 18 subnet. Host heading to the subnet. tujuh, satu, dua, tiga, is times 2021 20 60 plus 6 host plus less 23 will 512.
Okay, this is really a simple question, and we can follow the exact same process as last time. Pause the video here if you want to try it by yourself. Okay, let's figure it out. Again, we can simply use the 2 to the power of x formula, where x is the number of borrowed bits. If we borrow no bits, we can't make any subnet. We just have one large /16 network. If we borrow 1 bit, we can make 2 subnets, because 2 to the power of 1 is 2. This gives us a prefix length of /17. And if we write this subnet mask in dotted decimal, it is 255.255.128.0. Remember, when you enter commands in the Cisco CLI, you can't use the CIDR notation like /17. You have to enter dotted decimal, 255.255.128.0. Anyway, 2 subnets isn't enough for our needs, so let's borrow another bit. Borrowing 2 bits allows for 4 subnets. This is a /18 prefix length, and the subnet mask is written as 255.255.192.0 in dotted decimal. Let's borrow another bit. Borrowing 3 bits gives us 8 subnets, and a /19 prefix length. The subnet mask is 255.255.224.0 in dotted decimal. 20 in QSub 2.625 bit, 155.255.254.0 in dotted decimal. So, this is the correct answer. We should use a /23 prefix length so we can create the 80 subnets we need. 128 subnets is more than we need. /22 only allows for 64, which is not. I won't show you all 80 subnets. Let's look at some of the subnets that can be made. First being 172.16.0.0/23, of course. The next is 172.16.2.0/23. Notice I changed the last bit of the network portion to 1. Next is 172.16.4.0/23. Then 172.16.6.0. .172.16.8.0, etc. Let's do another similar question. Once it, again, 172.16.0.0/23. 117.7 by the network at 20.
You have been given. Okay. Wait a minute. 22.0.0/16. You are required to divide the network into 500 separate subnets. What prefix length should you use for the 500 separate subnets? I think we can use um good. We have 4.9. Not important. For 9 we can create your 500. I think. Yes. So, okay. This it's yeah.
Separate strategy. 25. We need to do this because 2 on the left. You're going to be given the 172.5/26/27, etc. Even with the class B method. Here's another practice question. Look at practice. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Divide this class. It's even conductor.
Horizon 172.80.0/16 unit 100 we will have to use we have to that's 24. That's 24. These if you not subnet itself to 172 0 test and the first will be 18 1 7 8 0 2 0 will be 7 18 adding one 0 plus 2 18 1 2 7 18 2 18 also tests 24 yes Don't understand this.
You have been given the 172.18.0.0/16 method. Your company requires 250 subnets with the same number of hosts per subnet. What prefix length should you use? This time you have to consider both the number of subnets and number of hosts. Once again, pause the video to solve this yourself. 8 host bits allows for 254 hosts per subnet. Do one more bit. This time with the class B network.
72.25 17 92 for the slash 21. For the slash 21 you will 24 23 21 will be 92. Minus 16. 8. 1 4 2 1 2 will be 6. That's 21. 24, 22, 22, 21. It will be network. And 28 plus 64 plus 10, 8 will be 2. And 5, 10, and
2 binary. As usual, the red bits are the host bits, and the purple bits are the borrow bits, which are now part of the network portion. Change the host bits all to 0, turn it back to dotted decimal, and you get 172.25.216.0. So, there's the answer to the question. 172.25.217.1 process was exactly the same as for class 2 network. There are just more hosts. Here's a chart like the one I showed you for class B addresses, showing the number of available subnets and the number of available host addresses for each prefix length and subnet. Simply be a voice in your head that progression. Just know these patterns so you can calculate these when you next. Being given the one set of
You have been given the once again what previous language used.
what prefix points should you use? Let's go to question C. 172.21.111.201. That's address. Okay, let's go to question 78/26 belongs to. Pause the video to find.
Honestly, yes, address. Uh, okay. Six. Mm, good. Six.
Find your answer. One 172.16.0.0/4. 4 subnets of equal size.
And it was like into the force. We have to borrow. Dua delapan enam empat berarti 7 plus 8 plus 14 dan broadcast 28 28 7 2
Okay, let's go to the last question. O.O/6.
divide. So that element 5 12 tujuan plus 26 plus 2 plus we will be able to make it 28. Mana ya? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 23. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 23, 24. Plus 24, 25, 6 host. Plus 256, 5, 12, 2024. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, slash 22. Plus 22 itu 24, 22. Boros 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Network to make section of this video. And then wait for the next. subnets. With at least the video for Galen.111.201s. Belong to. Tokyo line A. In this
That's it for this session. We'll continue at 9